welcome everybody to our next episode. My goodness, is this 20? Is this actually 20?
This is 21. This is 21.
This is 21. Oh, so we've made it past the 20 hump. We celebrated that. This is exciting. Welcome to episode 21 of Branding and the Beast.
Wait, how do I? Oh, wait, that's the wrong one.
21, I don't know. I'm not good with numbers. That's why I went to law school. My name is Sean Bernstein. I am one of your co-hosts. My business is The Right Stuff Agency. I get to tell really interesting stories in really interesting ways. And my incredible co-host is
Alicia Disantis, owner of 38th and Kip Studio, which is a branding, design, and illustration studio. So glad to see you, Sean.
Oh, always a pleasure, pal. It's so good to see you. It's good to be doing these.
It is.
I love it when we do it. You know, it takes some getting together, it takes some scheduling. Now that we've got 2 guests per episode,
It
it's
does,
a bit of teeth pulling that's involved, but it is well worth it every time.
Oh, definitely. I've been so excited with how the past 2 episodes have come about, having 2 different guests. So our last episode, we had 2 guests that had never met each other. And in this episode, we also have 2 guests who have never met each other, which I am really looking forward to because the guest that I invited is really very difficult to not like him. And he's extremely accomplished salesperson. And I'm excited to meet Jessica, our other guest, as well.
I've had the pleasure of meeting both of our guests because I got to meet one in LA and one I've known for quite some time now. And they're both really, it's hard. If you're that good a salesperson, it's hard not to be likable. I think that's kind of part of the job, and they're really good at being likable. So I'm excited to see what they have to say, what they bring to the table. You don't really know what's going to come next. That's part of the fun of doing this.
Well, exactly. And on that note, we can tell our guests what we're talking about, which is, if you haven't guessed already, sales, and or not our guests, our listeners and watchers. We are talking about.
Wait, you said listeners plural?
I don't even think my mom watches anymore, so it's all on you.
It's been done.
It's been we're at episode 21 then. We are talking about the modern day lead generation process, which I don't really think is discussed enough as a part of marketing and brand strategy. That we've been selling for probably as long as humans have been in existence. And the tremendous changes that in the past, 5 years, the sales process has gone through. It's really an interesting topic to talk about. 2 people who have been very, very successful in this area.
One of the best points, I did sales training going back to high school. My family was involved in sales businesses. And one of the best points I ever heard from a trainer was that everything we do in life is sales. If you've ever dated, that's sales. If you've ever applied for a job, that's sales. You're selling yourself. Everything that we do is a sales act, whether we think about it or not. So, sales can have such this ugly connotation that does not deserve because, we don't want to think about, sales. No, it's the highest paying profession in the world. If you're good at it, you can do incredibly well. And trust me, you're not doing well by being an unlikable creep. You're doing well by being likable and genuine and forming real relationships and being the person that somebody wants to do business with. So there's an incredible human story element to there, ding, 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 to doing sales well, even if you're not selling a human service.
Well, exactly. And when we were writing the brief for this episode, the first thing that popped into my head was my grandfather on my mom's side. After he got out of the Korean War, he literally sold vacuum cleaners door to door in Cleveland, Ohio. He was your quintessential 1950s salesman and eventually moved up through the ranks to become a relatively successful individual selling Cadillacs. And, I know that you have a similar but also very different story of sales within your family history.
Yeah, I've got a few kind of all over the place, but the one that jumped to mind, because you'd mentioned it earlier, was my great-grandfather. My great-grandparents came from Russia, really from, I think, actually what's technically Poland. They had a general store there that was burned down by Cossacks. My great aunt, who I knew very well, still had the burn marks from being a toddler in the fire,
Oh my
and
God.
lived into her 90s. I never noticed them, but apparently she did have them. And they escaped the fire. They were pregnant with their third child en route. My other great aunt, who died just during COVID, she was about 98. So, it's ancient history, but it's not that ancient to me because I knew these folks very well. And they moved to Northern Ontario, to Timmins, Ontario, which is truly 500 miles north of Toronto and truly middle of nowhere country, home of Shania Twain. And at the time, were immigrants who spoke no English. I believe my great grandmother was a florist in the old country, so they wound up selling flowers here. I guess that they had picked wildflowers and were able to do that enough without any English to be able to afford their first cow. And the first word of English that Easter had learned was milk. And he was able to go door to door selling milk. And from that was able to procure more cows, started a small dairy that became a much, much larger enterprise. So my grandfather grew it as the largest private dairy in Ontario when he sold. But all started from great sales and forming relationships and really, when I say bootstrapping it, I don't know if they could afford boots. So about as ground up as it gets.
Yeah, I'll say. I mean, when you hear a story like that and you think of what the modern day business development manager, the tools they have available to them, from AI sequencing and automated emails, list generation. You can even have AI write the email for you. Cold calling software. Tools, gated content, all of these things to nurture that relationship. And yet there's still this really important component of, well, what's in it for me? How are you going to solve my problem? And do I actually enjoy talking to you? Because you're not going to buy something from someone you really don't enjoy talking to, unless maybe it's like, you have a plumbing problem at 3 a.m. You don't really care who's walking through the door to fix your toilet.
No, exactly. And, unless it's an absolute urgency, but by and large, and, even if you're the best salesperson in the world, if you're you're not going to be the best if you're unlikable. But if you are unlikable, if people really get the ick, as they say, if people are really feeling uncomfortable being around you, doing business with you, they're not going to want to. Nobody's going to want to be in that room with you. The old adage in sales is people don't want to be sold to; they want to feel like they're buying.
Mm-hmm.
And really good sales is about putting the customer first in giving them the agency to sort of make their choice. You're there to guide them and shepherd them. And our guests will speak more about this. I'm by no means a sales expert, but there is something really to be said for forming those relationships. When you look at your grandfather going door to door and my great grandfather going door to door, this is before the age of computers, let alone AI, let alone. I mean, the dairy was big when they got a telephone.
Yeah.
Started without a telephone. This is literal face-to-face, door-to-door relationships and building that brand of personality out of those relationships.
Yeah. Yeah. It really is a fascinating topic. And, again, when I was writing my portion of the brief for this, I was thinking about a recent example, especially in technology, that I've been drawn to, that I've been the one that's like, wow, that's a really good sales. And I haven't used them yet, but I've been thinking about them constantly. And I don't know if this is in Canada, the Rocket Money app. Have you heard about this?
I don't think so. I'm not sure.
It almost sounds too good to be true. And the value proposition and the pain point behind it is so beautiful that you literally log in. I don't know if you give them your email, and it finds every single subscription that you have, how much you're paying for it, and then it will negotiate using AI or something, I don't know, negotiate a lower rate, and or with one click, you can unsubscribe. That is
Wow.
the crazy part, because that's a huge pain point, right? It's like, oh, I don't want to have to call somebody or go through 25 steps where they can't even find the button to click unsubscribe.
In this digital world, we have learned to kind of work around. I mean, how many people have, the generation after us, we're old now, you and I, the generation after us will do anything to not use a telephone.
Right.
Will do anything to avoid, whether it's a chat bot, whether it's just, yelling by email. We'll do anything to avoid talking to somebody else. And that is not how the world works. The first thing I learned in journalism school, the first day of school, they said, in the age of the internet, the money will go to those who can still telephone. And it's very true. And I think that'll be ever thus. The most money will go to people who can still form those human relationships.
Yeah.
Because AI is simply not human. So it's great when it's, helping as a tool in our daily lives, like something like that. There's so many uses for it. But there's a reason why I do what I do as human-generated content, because those human relationships are irreplaceable.
Yeah. So I'm curious to know, and you're a very mindful buyer. I'm curious to know if there's been a sales pitch or something that's caught you recently that you have been, that's been compelling to you to make a purchase.
I am currently actually looking, funny enough, at a new automation tool for behind the scenes of my business that I just signed up for. And I really, frankly, was kind of subscribed by the time I even had sales call. Somebody else had told me about it. It meets my needs, and it meets them in a way that it doesn't automate everything that I do, because I didn't want that. I didn't want to suddenly become a robot. So I really want something that could assist me without taking over my lead generation process. And this looks like it's the right fit. I'm still working with the tool. It's still, working some kinks through. But I'm really intrigued to see where it can go, because I think there's a lot of potential there. What about you?
Well, so mine is this Rocket Money
Oh, yeah. So,
app,
okay.
but I haven't used it yet. But I've been.
Are you going to try it or not? You haven't yet.
Yeah, I think I am. I think I am. Really, that pain point of them unsubscribing for me, that alone is valuable to me. So I'm really thinking, like, what is finding that specific thing that you really dislike, and finding a company to do it for you. I mean, that's the pitch in itself.
No, it is. And, for me, mine is a reach out tool. I do a lot of human reach outs, and I will still continue to do that. It is difficult to scale given my calendar on the level to which I want to do it. If it can kind of kickstart that process and help me kickstart that process, but still give me the agency in the conversation, that's something I'm interested in. I don't want to lose the agency in the conversation. I don't want to lose that back and forth. But if we could find that connection, that midpoint that really bridges that gap, I'd be thrilled. Yeah. Do we have our guests or not just yet?
I see the guests in our lobby. So without further ado, let's invite the experts in and chat about this.
Yeah.
Welcome back, everyone. We have our two esteemed guests here in business development. I will be first to introduce Richard Agopian, my good friend. We have some more stories together. He is probably the best salesperson I've ever met in my life. He works in restaurant, technology, SaaS, and really is a tremendous individual who understands buyer psychology and nurturing relationships. And I'm really glad to have him on this call.
Thank you.
I'm thrilled Richard's here, and I get to introduce Jessica Lusthouse, who is one of my favorite people on the planet, although she'll deny it, but she really is one of the favorites. One of the few people who truly gets me, so I always, appreciate that. I've got a soft spot. She is also a phenomenal sales professional, really reinventing the world of sales tech across North America. Is that too lofty to say? And beyond? I don't know. What's you feed me in, Jess. What's appropriate?
I guess and anything for you, Sean, but I think the best way to put it is I am really Richard's peer and competitor. So it's nice to talk to someone who's super in the space, also in restaurant online ordering. And I saw your LinkedIn. We definitely delve in the same circles quite a bit. So it's great to have this opportunity to talk to someone who's encountering probably a lot of what our company's going through at the same time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I didn't realize when we joined up Jessica and Richard that you guys were in such similar industries.
hmm
So it's really interesting to me. And talking about lead generation and the sales cycle from a technology perspective, and we talked just before you both joined the call, just around how much business development has changed so rapidly with technology and AI advancements and buyer demands and expectations, but really how a lot of things stay the same, which is around, pain points and solving a problem. And especially in restaurants where there are so many problems all the time and so many hurdles to overcome. So, I'm curious to get your take, and Richard, I'll start with you, how you got into this field, and your story around working in sales and business development.
Yeah. So I came from the nightclub industry originally. I worked as an event manager, promoter, worked with a record label, tour manager for DJs. So I was kind of in that hospitality space, but it wasn't very technology oriented at that time. When we first started, email marketing was a new thing. I think, I had a lot of AOL and Prodigy URLs in my email lists, just to kind of date myself on that one. And we were among the first to start really using email marketing to promote events instead of just putting flyers on people's cars, which, helped us really cut cost and, cast a much wider net. That flowed up to me and a few of my friends starting a reservation platform called Table Place, which was kind of focused on Las Vegas bottle service and kind of that removing that barrier to entry where people didn't have to know a host to get a table at a Vegas nightclub. So they would just go through our portal. We had a bunch of RSS feeds set up. You could just go in there, pick the place you want to go, and you could book it. So it was almost like a hot wire for nightclubs. And we ended up packing it up and selling it to another reservation platform that bought us out. And I went into the marketing world for a while, helping restaurant owners establish their brand, get a website going, get their social media, all their localized SEO. And I saw a lot of the problems they were facing. Everything was very disjointed. And when you and I met was when I joined Pop Menu, which was, I think, one of the first truly all-in-one restaurant solution platforms. And kind of from there, I took a very technical approach, I think, because I understood what they were facing, but I almost immediately went towards, upper end of mid-market and enterprise, which I'm sure Jessica knows. SMB and enterprise are two completely different languages and different approaches. So when it comes to lead gen, I think at the top end for enterprise, it's a very, very different approach, which we can get into later if you want. But yeah, that's kind of my path to where I ended up.
And Jessica, I'll ask you the question that I legitimately don't know the answer to. How did you get started doing all of this? I'm curious.
It starts at around puberty. So when I was 13,
as does most things.
And we're off. Love it.
When I was 13, I broke my father's antique phone. It's one of those rotary phones. And I felt so guilty that I wanted to find a way to buy him a new one. I found this really sketchy ad where you could go to a plaza and sell chocolates for charity at a big plaza, and you would make $1 for every chocolate bar that you sold. And don't try this at home, kids. You would get picked up in a van, as it always starts, and you would end up at a plaza, and you would literally sell these boxes of chocolate. And I would come home with like $40, $50 in my pocket every day, which was pretty good in 2004 for a 12, 13-year-old. And I got to buy my dad the phone in like 3 weeks. And he was really impressed because that's, if you took my regular allowance, that would have taken me 6 months to buy him that phone and to replace something that I had broken. But what I realized was that I really loved the independence that came with being able to not just have a job, but to be able to be in charge of my own destiny. And I know a lot of salespeople say that, but I'm included in that camp of just having a good conversation, and that conversation completely controlling the destiny of your life. And so I inadvertently fell into a few sales roles after that. But if you really want to ask where it started, it was definitely around the 12, 13-year-old mark. And when it came to, the restaurant industry, this was supposed to be a 6-month gig. I was on my way to law school, but to my grandparents' disappointment, I really fell in love with sales as a young adult. And I think a lot of people at the same time had this idea where enterprise solutions had these incredible technologies. Starbucks was capturing the hearts of millions of people by getting customers to preload money onto their Starbucks app or their Starbucks card. You have Tim Hortons, which obviously have people just wait outside of a lineup for many minutes just to get a coffee that they don't even love, just to see if they can win the to win. And we were inspired by that, but we wanted to bring it to the SMB market. And here we are in 2025.
Wow. That really, it's important. So when I went to visit Sean in July, he was so nice. He took me to the Tim Hortons down the street every day before our excursion, and we waited in that line that you're referring to get a coffee that wasn't that great. So
my condolences. Yeah.
Next time we come, we have Nespresso now, so we got fancy.
So I mean, we're entering a brand affinity sort of concept here now, which would lead me into the next question: is why is sales and business development so important to building a brand? And Jessica, I'll let you continue on as we're talking about Tim Hortons here.
I'm not an expert at building a brand. I'll tip my hat off to every marketer and every visionary. But what I can tell you is the journey of someone who typically had to make quite a few sales without having too much marketing behind my belt. And it'll really explain how important it actually is to build a brand. And if anyone's listening to this who might not have the marketing dollars yet, or who might be a smaller operation, you are your brand. So I come from the bootstrap tech startup world. We were fortunate enough to get acquired by private equity a couple of months ago, and now we actually get to talk about building a brand properly. But when you don't have a brand, thanks to all of the marketing that's sort of pushing behind you, one thing to always remember is that your personality becomes a habit, and it really bleeds into the entire team, and it becomes their personality and their motto, and that actually becomes a brand. So, for example, while we didn't have any marketing dollars to do pay-per-click or advertising in the truest sense, what I always wanted to make sure of is that our company was never known as the pushy salespeople, the ones that'll never stop calling you, stop knocking down your door. That becomes a personality, and that definitely becomes a brand as well. And I'm sure Richard and I can think of a few names of, brands that are associated with that type of feeling. So our brand really became, have a 4.9 on Google with hundreds of positive reviews, be the salesperson that shows up and consults, be the person who has a memorable and honest conversation. And if you have that conversation hundreds and hundreds of times over, even without true marketing in the sense, that became our identity and that became our brand long before we had the sophistication or the dollars really to talk about having a brand in the more traditional sense.
Love that.
I'm not really sure what I can add. That answer was kind of perfect. You covered everything I would want to say there too. One thing I will add to it, I would say building a brand isn't really my biggest forte, which is, why I bring in my friends like Alicia to help my company with our branding and things like that. But along with building a brand, I think the brand awareness side is usually kind of where I come in, and helping, getting the word out there and getting people talking about your company, even if they're not necessarily a client. One of my absolute favorite things to do, in speaking with people is, even if they're not going to become a client of mine, is to, offer my advice to them on, hey, you should look into this, this, and this. If this is something that you want to do that maybe we don't offer, here's a list of like 3 companies I think that do this really well. And nurturing those relationships. I think my CEO, told me several times he hired me because I can talk. And he's not the kind of person who's going to be on the phone for 6 hours with somebody, where I'll happily do it and just have a lot of very friendly conversations, build up those relationships, and maybe down the line, they'll work with us. And if not, I gained an ally who I could potentially meet someone else through.
Yeah, I love that. I'm thinking about, brand building, that, Richard, I don't think you're giving yourself enough credit, because a lot of times, I think in what you do, you are the very first introduction point, right? You're the first touch point of the brand awareness cycle, that your email to them or your phone call or interaction, that is the very first opportunity they have to learn about you. And that is a hugely critical component of their expectation of the brand.
Yeah, those initial touch points or the cold outreach is always, depending on what industry you're in and depending on who you're speaking with, it's varying approaches. I like cold calling is like the worst. I can't do it. I'm terrible at picking up a phone and calling somebody out of the blue, but I can write a cold email with my eyes closed. Something that's going to be compelling, something that's going to be very simple. You ask permission, hey, wondering if I could send you some information about this, and don't try to give somebody a 6-page sales pitch in a LinkedIn message, I see that every single day now. I get, I don't know, probably 10, 15 messages a week from lead gen companies on LinkedIn trying to sell me on their services. And it just starts with a sales pitch. And it's like, click, nope.
Yep.
So
Me too.
I think a lot of companies or a lot of salespeople's approach is, it's not polite enough. And it's not, you have to ask. You can't just shove something down their throat. Like Jess said, you don't want to be the pushy salesman.
We were talking before you guys got on about how people don't ever want to be sold to. They want to feel like they're buying. So forming that relationship, and it's funny talking, Rich, about your experience. If you're good at sales, it would strike me, you are effectively the face of the brand.
Yeah.
You are the brand. You are the face of it. You are the face people associate with that business. So being able to do that and do it well, you are doing a whole lot of that marketing work just by showing up. And you're making marketing look good just by showing up. What we like to try to stay current. At least try. Over the past year, what's something you've really noticed in the industry that maybe surprised you, or that you saw as kind of a really significant change that you think more people should be talking about, more people should be aware of? Rich, let's start with you, and then we'll go to Jessica.
I'll say in the last year, it's not really on the sales side, but I've seen a tremendous drop in the quality of customer service in our industry, just across the board from a lot of companies. And the ones that are really, keeping their clients, retention rates, being normalized, are the companies that really invest in their customer service and their client success teams. Anybody can hire 100 salespeople and get, thousands and thousands of clients, but can you keep them? And that's the really important thing. And I've looked at, past companies I've worked for, companies that I go up against, and, it's one of those things I hear all the time. They're like, oh yeah, we were with so-and-so for 3 years, but, I had these issues and they never got fixed, or they kept promising me this, or God forbid the salesperson oversells something that it doesn't do. And then, once they get locked into a 12-month contract, it's too late, whereas at our company, we have no contracts. It's all month to month. It's all open-ended, and it's very, very transparent. And I think my support team outnumbers my sales team 2-1, at least. That's the one thing that I've seen, just it's trending in the wrong direction, and it's only getting worse, it seems like.
Wow. Jessica, you noticing the same thing?
No, I actually resonate a lot with that. I will say, though, this has been the year that I've been the least surprised in my life, if I'm being fully honest. Truly, I've been shocked for the last 11 years straight. And I think for once, I feel like I'm taking a breath and I'm not so shocked. And here's why. Rich, maybe this would resonate with you, but business almost didn't feel real between like 2014 and 2020. People were throwing around money like it was air for the most part. There was so much waste and there was so much fake growth. And Richard, you're talking about the tail end of that. It's easy if you have the capital to hire 100 salespeople to put out so much marketing and to have this hyper growth. But if you don't have the infrastructure, this is why we've been seeing a lot of the layoffs and a lot of the scale downs in the tech industry, is because not everyone thought through the tail end of what it means to actually acquire all of that business. But I will say I was really shocked up until about 2020 or even 2022 at how wasteful the industry has been. To be honest, every salesperson, there would be a sushi chef, there would be a masseuse, there would be all of these incredible things that you see at these Palo Alto offices. And you would look at the customer acquisition cost to lifetime value, and it just wasn't making sense. It would be something like 1-to-1 or 2-to-1. A salesperson wouldn't be profitable for something like 24 months. All of those things were, to me, whispering indications of poor revenue health or poor financial health. And I found it to be extremely jarring in the tech industry. What I don't find jarring is that in 2025, prudence is making a comeback, being effective with your dollar and really wanting to see a real legitimate return within 12 months. These are all things that are making a comeback in 2025. The general principles of sustainably building revenue generation are things that we have been seeing so much more of now that the market has sobered up a little bit. I also don't find it surprising that a lot of companies are becoming more product focused rather than sales focused. So it's not so much about having 500 salespeople. It's more about making the product strong enough that maybe you can have a self onboarding process where you can actually win new customers without having that massive sales team, and focusing on a 2-to-1, a 3-to-1 ratio, just like Rich said, of having people to support that business after you've won it over.
That's a very good point. One thing also, I think, I don't know, in my industry, having a book of business and having a solid rapport and referrals, I think is quite important. Whereas if you sell somebody on something and they're not happy and they're going to cancel when the contract's over, they're not going to refer you to anybody. So the cost of acquisition, for a brand new client is obviously higher than someone at Tim Hortons picking up the phone and calling someone at another franchise and saying, "Hey, I work with these guys. They're great. You should talk to them." And that to me is really, really important because it lengthens the lifespan of the account. It cuts the cost down. And it really helps, I think, get kind of more of I guess a market share in certain circles. Like I wouldn't put McDonald's and Hilton in the same social circle. It'd be nice to have people from both, but if you can get really saturated into one side or the other and really spread your wings, that's when I think you've succeeded as a sales campaign.
And Richard, if I can't talk about this, then just we'll cut it out. But I'm thinking of the recent situation you had when we're just talking about. I mean, I think Jessica and Richard, for you guys are experts in this and been doing this for decades. But I'm thinking about individuals who are newer to this, or maybe not as savvy. I think about, Richard, the experience you had where you sent a polite email to a organization. And can I talk about this?
Yeah, absolutely.
I won't say who. And Richard, in return, now, of course, this is what, a couple weeks ago during the raging fires. This woman responds, "Don't contact me. We don't do business with any companies in California. Take me off your list."
No, and you people are crazy. Take me off your list. That was what she wrote. So it was a franchisee from I think it was Chiba Hut. I don't care if they know. They're not one of my clients. The franchisee at Chiba Hut,
They're not a
and
sponsor.
yeah,
They're not
it's
a
fine.
sponsor.
From
Richard Zero fucks Agopian.
Yep, from Nashville, Tennessee. And I sent this very polite. It was my intro, sequence email. It was, "Hi, this is Richard from Orders Co. I noticed you guys do a lot of business with this and this and this. I'd love to send more information about how we can help you with this." That was it. And her response almost immediately, like she responded within 30 seconds of the email, and said, we don't do business with companies based in California. You people are all crazy, something like that. And it's like, okay.
The interesting
Wow.
thing about it is that, we had talked about crafting these messages and how you deliberately used where you live as part of the strategy to, build rapport and make them feel comfortable. So, I mean, the whole thing is just ridiculous on so many levels. But, Jessica, I'm wondering if you have a similar, in your level of experience in your role, that like there's things you just don't even really care about anymore. You're just like, whatever, I'm just doing my job.
Is it toxic if I hit them up, pretend I'm from Tennessee or something? It's a perfect client.
She's all.
Wow.
I'm not going to say what I was going to. I'm not going to say it. Go on. Okay, yeah, I retract what I said.
I think maybe Rich and I are both a lot less surprised about anything that happens than we would have been a few years ago. I will say this. I like to keep our conversations as direct and as intimate as possible. And so I always like to say, shaking someone's hand is better than a phone call. A phone call is better than a text message. A text message is better than an email. And an email is better than a spray and pray blast when it comes to getting to the heart of talking to a prospect. So this is actually a trend that I've really seen since 2023 as well, which is people are going back to the basics and people are going back to having intimate conversations, and there's nothing that replaces that. So the way that my sales teams have won, when they have won in the past, is by keeping that communication as direct and as close as possible. I don't think anyone would be able to break bread with Richard or any of us and call him crazy, or you know what I mean? The closer you are to someone, the less you become a keyboard warrior and the more you realize that you have more in common when you're having a drink face to face with them. And so for that reason, our industry lends itself to it. The SMB market of restaurants does really well with field sales. So one way that I really try to avoid space between people, especially in such a divided climate, where something as random as the state that you live in can maybe create some prejudgments that might be entirely false about a person. When you're breathing the same air as that, it miraculously kind of goes away. So if anyone is just starting out as a sales leader, I would say try to keep the conversations as intimate as possible, where the probability of you breaking bread with your prospect is very high.
Oh, I love that.
I like that.
So,
I like that. I want to be mindful of our guests' time. Alicia, can we close with our hot take question?
oh, no, I'm not ready.
I know it's too good, but they have places
I want
to
to ask.
go.
I want to ask. I want to ask the hot take question, but I also want. I want to know. I want Jessica and Richard to tell me more about tips for new sales and sales
I have
leaders.
30 more minutes.
Okay.
I'm good on time. I'm good on time.
Let's do both. Okay, so Alicia, you go for it. I'm closing with our hot takes.
Okay.
So
You close with the hot take.
But you go first.
Okay, Jessica, you've started talking about it, and now I'm enticed. So, tell me more about what can be done. Some tips for people in sales, entrepreneurs. I mean, there's so many people that are in the gig economy, or business development leaders that have a team. Recommendations that you would make to be successful in business development.
There's usually a lot of fear that prevents action in the beginning. And so I like to run an exercise very frequently before doing any cold or even warm outreach. This doesn't matter what industry you're in, but imagine you're Let's say you're selling a payment processing solution and you're a field sales rep on day one. I want you to almost close your eyes and consider the following. There's a pizza shop owner who's talking with his business partner, and he's saying, this payment processor is taking 2.9%. They're taking 30 cents of every single transactions. These are really eating into my margins. I think I'm going to have to increase the price of food here. Let's say you own a branding or media company or a writing agency, for example. Before you go out and you make a sale, I want you to think of a small law firm, and they're saying, look, we have fantastic lawyers, we have incredible talent. I just don't know how to get my story out there. I don't know how to get the right type of clients. I don't know how to get my name out there. We don't have a massive marketing budget. We can't hire a full-time CMO. Imagine they were having those types of difficult conversations and you physically saw stress on their face. Picture their face, feel their stress, and imagine that that's what they were going through 10 minutes before you cold called them, 10 minutes before you emailed them, 10 minutes before you knocked on their door to introduce themselves. The good news is if your business is worth its weight in salt, it's solving a very real problem for somebody. So I want you to imagine what that problem actually feels like when someone is in the depth of that problem. The next thing I want you to imagine is that you are going to meet them 10 minutes after they had the depth of exactly that problem that they were describing. Now, the good news is if you know more or less who your prospects are and you know what problem you're trying to solve and you reach 100 people, I can almost guarantee you're going to meet one person every single day that is going to say, holy crap, I was just dealing with this exact problem. So you don't have to be the best speaker. You don't have to be the coolest dresser. You don't have to tell the funniest joke. Chances are, if you hit enough doors or call enough phones, you're going to meet those people whose problems have been brought up that day or at least that week. Takes away the fear.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah,
Amazing.
I'll definitely agree with you there. I hear all the time like, wow, your timing was perfect. We were just talking about this morning, or this was something that's been keeping me awake for the last 2 weeks. And it's a numbers game, like you said, you know. Um, for me, I mean, SMB is a little different, obviously, but I think on the enterprise side, the one thing that I can't stress enough to people is do your diligence, discovery questions, do research, learn everything you can about them. I've even set Google News alerts for the companies I want to talk to just to see what they're talking about. And say, I noticed you were talking about this in your last press release, that really resonated with me. And have a conversation with them about that before your product even comes into the picture. The second part of it is I see this way too often, and I'm sure you see it too, is the sort of kitchen sink approach to selling is just listing all of your products and going through a 10-page marketing deck. Instead of asking 10 questions and then talking about the problems they're having, that's solution-based selling, I feel like it's a lost art. And someone who has worked in sales enablement and sales training for quite a while now, whenever somebody new comes to a company I work at and I have to train them, I wish I could get a dry erase board and just erase everything that they've learned sometimes, because they can be the most amazing salespeople because they have SDRs and BDRs feeding everything to them. But when they have to do their own prospecting and their own type of development, it's like watching, somebody fall into ice water.
Are we the same person? I'm not sure. I always like to remind myself, don't even sell the solution. Literally just sell the problem that you're trying to solve. It's amazing how much more open a prospect is when they feel the pain of the problem they might not even knew they had. So.
Absolutely.
Man.
Yeah. One of our main focuses right now are things like wedge products. So, if we are, trying to get in with a very large group, chances are I'm not going to get them to switch 300 units of a brand that's controlled by corporate into an entirely new POS system or an entirely new online ordering system. That's going to be a 6 month to 2 year process sometimes. Mm-hmm. But building the relationship with a wedge product, which I recommend this to any startup, is create some type of an independent parallel product that can work with any system, is not going to interrupt their current processes, and is going to solve something that maybe they don't know is a problem, or they're just doing it manually. In our case, we're really focused on third-party chargebacks. So Grubhub, DoorDash, Uber Eats, those things. There's a lot of fraudulent chargebacks, and there aren't any good systems out there that help combat those chargebacks properly. You can get it within very large financial ERPs and systems like that, but those are, they do more than just that one little piece. It's not an expensive thing for us to create. It's not overly monetized. It's just designed more to build a relationship with them and get us in the door, and start building up those relationships with the type of brands that we want to be aligned with in the coming years. I don't see enough companies doing that.
And that's for our listeners. So chargebacks is when you order something and then you say, "Oh, you gave me a turkey burger instead of a pepperoni pizza or something," and then you want the money back, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's usually a lot simpler than that. It's like, oh, it was 5 minutes late. I want a refund, or it's missing a pickle. I mean,
yeah.
it's sometimes they are legitimate, but a lot of times they're not. I think right now the industry average is somewhere around between 3 and 5% of third-party orders are chargebacks. Which,
wow,
I've got a pretty big franchise client, and they were doing, I don't even know, something like, I think we saved them, close to $20,000 in 1 month across, a couple hundred locations, just from chargebacks.
A lot of the chargebacks that my franchises are seeing is actually from fraud. And
Yeah.
most of the fraud will happen in 20% of the stores, for example. So things like double authentication.
It's geographic, for sure.
Or whatever it is has been really helpful.
Yeah, and it's primarily on the DoorDash platform because they have the largest market share.
Yeah.
And it's in densely populated areas. And what's crazy is the way these platforms are designed. A lot of the restaurants don't even know what's happening. I've had some meetings with some very, impressive brands, and they're like, okay, how do we check if we're getting chargebacks? I'm like, you don't even know how to look for it. And again, the third parties make it intentionally difficult to find. You have to specifically go and pull a very specific report. It's not part of your P&L or your accounting that they give to you. So, helping them identify these things, sometimes it's like, just at that point, me pulling the curtain and unveiling what they've been missing.
Yeah.
They're like, okay, when do we start? Like, I don't even need to pitch them on it anymore. It's just, okay, you helped me find something I didn't know was leaking. Let's fix it.
And that's exactly what builds trust, is helping them with something that no one else told them.
Yeah.
Sean.
Wild.
I think
it's really interesting. I could listen to this all day.
I know. It's just, restaurant technologies are really fascinating.
It is. It is. So Alicia started this tradition with our podcast probably, I guess, a couple years ago now, where we had really interesting guests. And, as we get comfortable, we realize that everyone kind of thinks differently, sees the world differently, and everyone's got something of a hot take on something. There's always something that they have a viewpoint on that they know the rest of their industry, the rest of the world might disagree with, but it's the hill we'll die on. So we kind of like to close with our hot take segment, which I could see is salivating. So I'm very curious to see what it's going to be. What's a professional opinion that you have in your world that others would disagree with, and why? Rich, you want to go
start
first?
with me?
Yeah, why
or Jess, or Jess, do you want to start?
Please go for it.
Yeah, mine's a little controversial. I'm not gonna lie. I think that I think VCs are among the most dangerous parts of our business, and companies rush so quickly to get funding, and unfortunately, the VCs push these companies to scale way too quickly. We've seen that in a lot of companies that Alicia and I both worked at. Where they'll scale up super fast, and they're getting all these awards that, hey, we are, the new kid in town, and the VCs only care about making things look good on paper, for some type of a buyout. And I see companies every single day that were valued here, that are now here, that had this many clients, that now have this many clients, and I think that the VC culture and the VC process is systemically dangerous for startups. And if you can stay on seed money and bring yourself to profitability for as long as you can, with the right people in operations, and not putting, okay, not to be specific, but I think salespeople don't belong in operations, because they try to run it like a salesperson, and you can't do that. And oftentimes, the best salespeople make the worst sales leaders. Um, so when you have that kind of perfect storm of people controlling it, and then you have all this cash raining from above, it's really no wonder why it folds like a flan in a cupboard.
Yeah.
That's a hot take.
Yet all four of us are nodding along.
Unpopular opinion, but I'm going to stick with it.
Jessica, what's yours?
I just want. It sounds like you even had that hot take before it became normalized. I think we all sort of see it now after we see shit show after shit show that happened with all of the startups that got funding. But I think a lot of people didn't notice that exactly, and that's what I was saying before. The prudence that's finally coming into 2025. You can't just do this to a company and expect it to go well. My hot take isn't that hot myself. I just think that BDRs should be among the highest paid people at any organization. I always have felt like the higher I've grown at a company, or the higher up I go up a ladder, almost why does it get easier once you start getting paid more? I shouldn't say that out loud, and I hope my boss isn't listening. But
True.
real grind is when you're making a little bit over minimum wage, you're making 120 dials a day, you're knocking on 50 doors a day. When you're relying on a young, often scrappy person to turn their social intelligence into turning a stranger into someone who's willing to sit down and have a listen, do not underestimate that talent. That is some of the hardest work that I have ever seen. And, I think Richard and I both admitted to just how hard it is. Making one cold call will bring up your heart rate like 20, 30 points. Doing it 130, 150 times a day is really not easy. So appreciate your BDRs. I don't know why it's an entry-level position. I think that should be the final stage, personally. But
It's got one of the shortest lifespans. I mean,
yeah.
there's very few people I know that stay in that more than a couple of years. And they're just like, nope, I'm either going up or I'm going sideways.
Yeah.
No one, I don't know anybody who wants to be a career SDR, BDR. It's like as you said, it takes a toll on you.
Yeah. And then you meet one, and unsurprisingly, psychopath. Like they're taking ice every single day. They're eating carnivore, like the whole 9 yards. They just live the most difficult but most rewarding life. So.
Oh, this is triggering me.
Yeah.
I was one of those people. I don't talk
We
about
all
it
were
often.
at one point, I mean,
Oh, yeah.
we've all gone through it.
Oh, I worked at Chase Bank
Nice.
during the Great Recession in the hood of Cleveland. And we would call people with credit cards or, whatever, some ancillary service to try to get them checking accounts. And we would stay late. It was call night on Tuesdays. We'd stay till 7 p.m. and we'd call them specifically during dinner time. And my boss would walk around the cubicles and listen to our calls. I would get nauseous like every Tuesday, knowing I had to get up and go do that. And people would get so pissed. Why are you calling me at dinner? And these are like rough people. I mean, this isn't like a posh. It was so bad. I mean, yeah.
I'm sure you heard some choice language too.
I did hear some choice language. I did.
I started doing cold call sales the day Bear Stearns crashed, and I was doing sales for tech recruiting. Not a great time to be a tech recruiter,
06?
I'll tell you that. 08, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah, 08. It was a true mess. So we've all been there. We've done it.
Yeah. All right. Let's wrap this puppy up. Jessica, where can we find you?
Honestly, buried in my office most days. I would say a lot of my resources are being pulled into a company that I've seen grown quite a bit called Tap Mango. We're a leading customer engagement, loyalty, and online ordering platform for restaurants as well as retail shops across North America. And it's really been an honor to see a company go from a 5-person operation to what it is today. I would say if you're a small or medium business, it's really worth checking out.
And you're on LinkedIn? We can find you on LinkedIn?
Sure.
Or?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn.
Right on.
There you go. Follow the wisdom. What about you, Rich?
Yeah, I'm definitely a work rat as well. So the company I work with is called Orders Co. Orders.co. We are targeted, I'd say, but not targeted. Our ideal client profiles kind of range depending on the products that we offer, everything from SMB up to enterprise. Typically, we focus around online ordering, SEO, loyalty. We have automated marketing built into it. We just launched our own native POS system, which we're very excited about, which is going to employ a lot of very, I think, advanced features that you just don't get from a lot of the POS systems that are restaurant focused. We spend a lot of time working with POS integrations from our ordering, and we've seen the limitations are always from the POS side. So why not build our own and start from there? And it's truly designed around the restaurant, whether it's single or multi-location, to really help facilitate orders. We're looking at inventory management, all those things, and it's just trying not to gouge our clients the way some of the other POS systems do with their processing and their fees, because restaurants have very low margins, just the way it is, especially if you're not serving booze. It's one of the most difficult industries, and one of the reasons I think I've stayed in it for so long is because I truly love the restaurant world. I love food. I love cooking. My parents had a restaurant when I was growing up, and I think they need more allies.
Love that. And you're
Very
on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn as well.
Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure. We've learned a lot. It's been enlightening, and we are better for it. So hopefully our listeners are as well, and viewers.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Take it easy. Wow. That was so good, wasn't it?
That was fantastic. Just great guests. Interesting to see what happens when you put strangers in a room who don't know each other, and then it turns out they have so much in common and both so much wisdom to offer the conversation.
I mean, what I love about it is that it's like, I feel like so much education around sales is like stuff that's not actionable. And these people really gave very specific things you can do that made a lot of sense in contemporary times. And it's just so nice to see that.
And it's info that I think applies across the board, whether you're an enterprise listener or you're, SMB and you're just starting out, or you're, in the startup space and you're trying to grow. I think they have a lot of really valuable insight into what can make you successful. We talked about, they are the face of your brand.
Right.
Your salespeople are the face that people recognize. They are the face of your business. So treating them well, looking after them, making sure they have the right tools to succeed. There's a lot to be said for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, we are season 3. We are just,
2 guests was a smart idea.
I don't know how we're gonna. It's so much. It's so good.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. We will figure it out.
All right. So on that note, Sean, where can we find you?
You can find me all over the internet. I am The Right Stuff Agency, WRITE. So Instagram, The Right Stuff Agency. LinkedIn, The Right Stuff Agency. I'm also personal at Sean Bernstein. You can find me there too. Facebook, The Right Stuff Agency. Email me, Sean at therightstuff.agency. It's not .com, it's .agency. And I would love to connect. What about you, Alicia?
So you can find me at 38th and Kip. That's the numbers 38 and Kip, KIP. You search for that, you'll be able to find me on LinkedIn, Instagram. You can also find my personal profile, which I use very often on LinkedIn under Alicia Disantis. And, always looking to collaborate, always looking to consult and help out when needed, especially for nonprofits. Just help people be successful. That's what we're trying to do.
We're storytellers, you and I.
Good people.
Different media.
Yep.
It's all about telling stories.
All right. Well, thanks
Wonderful.
everybody for watching and listening.
Thanks, everyone.
We'll see you on the flip side. All right. Bye-bye.
Cheers.